Dr. CB.
Donnie.
Hey,
Back again. Willkommen.
Yeah.
And unto thee a willkommen.
And unto thee
Yeah.
a welcome of nice house blessings.
Yes. Bienvenidos, nice house blessings unto thee in this season.
Yeah. Yeah. We're in a new location.
We are settled.
Settled in a new location.
Yeah.
Still got odds and ends to finish, but settled.
Truly, the two-man podcast traveling band is settled.
Yeah.
We got to put that to rest.
The Vagabonds.
The Vagabonds.
They have a home. So I was thinking about this. We've been in a few different recording locations, starting with the Dunny.
The Donnie back in 2020. COVID.
Yeah, which we learned was an Australian word for bathroom.
Yeah. Which we... and so,
Matches.
Yeah. Dropping pod in the Donnie just made all too much sense.
On brand.
Yeah. Literal and figurative.
And then we were in Le Chateau.
Le Chateau. Yeah. We went... Yeah.
Higher. Le Chateau de Arborescence wasn't super great for audio.
Not too great for
very
audio.
Aesthetically higher.
Aesthetically, higher. That was on Beaver Street. The Dunny was on Kendrick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we had satellite location, Casa de Philippe.
Yeah, this is when we were on the move, huh? Casa
Yeah.
de Philippe, over in the Heights.
And then hitting up the shanty,
The Shanty. Les Shed de Padgad.
Le Shed de Podgad,
Yeah.
who is the godamus of Potamus.
He sure is, man. Shout out to the Padgad.
And
then
BP.
all that leading to Birch Avenue.
Birch Avenue. Here we are in the historic Nice House. Last episode, Jesse and Tim.
Jesse and Tim. Yeah, we closed out 2023 with the homies Jesse and Tim.
Yeah, turns out they still are doing well. Still running their companies,
Still living that life, I believe.
living that life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think who are people that are living that life? I think of Jesse, Tim, and Dan.
Yeah.
Are you still living that life?
Dude, you know, I only be living that life.
Yes, I believe all of that.
Believe that.
Yes. And thank
Yeah.
you for sharing with all of us.
Yeah. Living that life.
Living
How's
that
your
life.
life?
Good, man. Saw Cypress Hill the other day.
Oh, yeah. How'd
I guess
that go?
technically last night.
How did that go?
That was a ton of fun. That was a
Yeah.
blast from the past. Yeah, it's always funny to see some dudes in their 50s rapping about their dedication to the plant,
The ganja.
the ganja.
Yeah.
So it was fun to see Cypress Hill. I was really, really pumped to see the openers, though. That was a good time for Mr. Nice.
Mr. Nice.
For Mr. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered, did they have more fire officials in the vicinity? Did they take extra precaution for the potential, like a spark or a...
I didn't
Ash.
see any. I'm just going to guess that everyone within a quarter-mile of Fort Tuthill was high.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there were, they were probably high.
The fire officials?
I think the trees were high. Yeah. The stage was high. All kinds of high.
What about Cody B. Nice?
I don't even smoke, and I was high as a mug.
Yeah?
Yeah, man.
Just dipping into that secondhand weed smoke.
There was a lot of weed out there. I think I saw 311 out there. Right? At the amphitheater. I thought
So let's do a scaling question.
Yeah.
Let's scale 1 to 10.
Yeah.
The amount of smoke in that valley of that outdoor venue.
Yep.
Cypress Hill, 1 to 10. Where is it at?
About 8.5 or 9.
8.5, 9, 311.
6.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I thought 311 was going to be a lot. I'd say Cypress Hill smoked out 311 though.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, man.
Oh, dang.
Big time. Other than that, I'm living that life, man.
Oh,
Feeling
okay.
great.
Yeah.
great.
Well, it sounds like you're telling us you're living that life. What do we got on the docket for today?
Oh, shout out to Molly Wood. We're going beyond flag today for the first time in a minute with the intellectual, interpersonal, and intergalactic powerhouse, Mio Mayo Molly Wood,
Yeah.
the executive director for the Whale Foundation. Molly was born and raised in the throes of the Mogollon Rim.
Mongolian.
Right. It looks like Mogollon. Yeah, we're in the throes of the Mogollon Rim in Sholo, Arizona. The place where the main drag is named Deuce of Clubs, and the high school is named after your favorite nickname for middle-aged women trolling for younger men.
Ah, go Cougars.
Yeah.
In this episode, Molly goes beyond flag to discuss her personal interest in botany and herbalism, what led to her taking on a gig as a river guide, and ultimately what led to her applying for and being selected to be the executive director at the Whale Foundation, which is a nonprofit company oriented toward connecting the river guiding community with resources for mental health treatment, funding for education or further learning, and medical health treatment. Molly shares about the history of the Well Foundation, including the origins of its name, her vision for going forward, and some of the challenges she foresees.
Yeah, that's great stuff. It was a big pleasure sitting with Molly and to learn how much passion she holds for developing and building community in natural and organic ways, in addition to what GPS coordinates represent her favorite places to be connected to nature.
Yeah.
So tune in.
Thanks for tuning in as we go beyond flag with
Molly Wood.
Yeah.
Welcome to Beyond Flag, a Beyond the Pines production, created by, with, and for the people of Flagstaff, building connection in the town we love. We are your hosts,
Dr. Daniel J. Phillips
and Cody Bayles, also known as Dr. Chinchilla Nice Nice. Thanks for tuning in as we go beyond flag, straight from the dunny of our observatory.
Okay, Molly, welcome.
Thank
you.
in. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you here. It'd be cool to hear a little bit about what your life looks like, because I would wonder if you participate in like adventures and things, or what your role allows you to do.
Yeah, definitely. Especially now that summertime is starting and, wintertime is kind of by the wayside and the cold weather is starting to lighten up a little bit. I spend as much time as I can outside. I just bought a little inflatable kayak. I'm going to spend a bunch of time with my dog on the lake this summer. I'm actually just about to do my first little overnight river trip with my dad. He's 72 and he's never done anything on the river before, never spent an overnight trip. So he's really excited for that. It's his late Christmas present. But otherwise, I hike a ton. I have a really strong background in botany and herbalism, kind of just like self-taught from wandering around in the forest and being curious about plants and how people have used plants and continue to use plants. I'm an avid mushroom hunter. I'm a member of the Arizona Mushroom Society, which is a very big point of pride for me, although it's not like there's any requirements to be part of it. You just pay $25 and they let anybody in.
I was going to ask, yeah.
Yeah. But people always think it's really elite. They're like, oh, wow, you must be some sort of mycologist.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Sure am.
Do you test each other, though, while you're out there? Even though it wasn't tough to get in, do you kind of see who's really in or not?
I think the main test is like how excited you get when you find a mushroom. Like your level, like if you're like, oh, I just found a bolete, then people are like, you're a phony. But if you're like exploding with joy whenever you find anything, then people know that you're legitimate.
Yeah,
so.
you're legit. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is there a whole like hierarchical structure within the organization? Like, do you see yourself kind of rising to the top, becoming a president of some sort?
Oh man, I can't be involved with another nonprofit to that level. Well Foundation takes gets all of that part of my life.
There's not enough time for Well Foundation and being president of the mushroom.
The AMS.
Arizona Mushroom Society.
Society.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
AMS, yeah.
AMS.
Yeah, so simply a participant.
Yeah, simply a participant.
Yeah, good for you.
Again, a member, which their membership doesn't actually offer any sort of benefits or anything like that. You just get to tell people that you're a member of the Arizona Mushroom Society.
Well, that's the benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is probably the most anyone's ever talked about the Arizona Mushroom Society, frankly.
Oh, I'm really surprised because you had a really good list of really intriguing things. I had several questions, and right to the top rose AMS.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely get some mad shout outs on this episode.
Yeah,
We'll
there
have
you
to
go.
hashtag AMS.
Yeah, there you go. I don't even think they have social media.
Sure, they have a very deep, wide social media presence.
Yeah, who knows? Their logo for many, many years was just like the Arizona state flag in a circle with like this almost like offensive photo of a bolete just like superimposed over the top of it. And you look at it and you're like, who the hell designed this? And how is it effective marketing? But it is.
That's beautiful. Well, yeah.
Pulled you in.
Yeah.
Pulled me right in. It pulled me right in. So.
It sounds like they got some work that has been done and some work to do. In 5 years, maybe they'll a deep social media presence.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, mushroom hunting's trendy now. So
It is.
maybe they'll get some like influencers. Maybe Paul Stamets will come out and hang out with those guys.
Yeah.
So you mentioned just kind of like falling into a love of, would you say herbalism and botany? Just, and I guess I'd be curious to see or understand how you fell into that.
I think spending a lot of time outside and just like, I just always had like an affinity for it. I think when I was around 19 was when I first kind of had my introduction to like formal herbalism and formal herbalism studies. And kind of started with just like, looking around on the internet and learning about different plants. But then I moved back up to Flagstaff. I was in Tucson at the time. And I moved back up into Flagstaff and just started spending a ton of time outside and was just kind of inherently curious about the world around me. And so started to kind of learn on my own. And then I took a formal course in 2017, I think. And it was kind of like the National Guard of herbalism. Like we would get together once a month for a whole weekend and like study plants and then like go off and do our own thing and then like come back and do that again. So
yeah. And where are some of the places that's taken you?
Mostly just like meandering off trail through the forest in Coconino National Forest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So local here.
Mostly local. I've done some stuff like up in Colorado, Durango. I was down in Peru for a little bit and spent a bunch of time at the Natural Plant Museum. And that was actually a really humbling experience because most of the plants in Arizona are like, they tell you if they don't want you to touch them because they have spines. However, on the other side in Peru, there was this one plant in particular, and I was like feeling really confident about my herbalism studies. And I was like, this plant looks like a member of the mint family. And I went to touch the stalk of it. And you can tell if it's mint because it has this square stalk to it. Or square, whatever it's called.
Stem? Or?
Stem, yeah, thank you, stem. Yeah, obviously you can tell I study a lot about plants. But I went to touch the stem, and it's actually a member of the stinging nettle family, which is in the mint family. And I touched it, and my hand went numb for almost 3 days.
3 days?
Yeah, for a really long time.
Just from touching?
Just from touching it.
That was Peru, you say? So Peru don't mess around.
Yeah, don't touch plants unless you know what they are.
Wow.
Yeah, skin irritants.
Yeah.
Or poison, perhaps.
I one time touched a prickly pear. Yeah, you're saying spines indicate don't touch me.
Yeah.
I like to explore the world, Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to get into your poison ivy experience
Oh, yeah.
recently.
Oh,
I
geez.
don't want to get into that.
Dan had a whole thing with
Full
poison
body
ivy.
rash,
Yeah.
Oh, bummer. Did you trip or something?
No, I went on a backpacking trip. That trip was pretty adventurous all around. We actually cliffed out, and I was helping my kids scale a wall with like 12 inches of footpath with backpacks. Anyhow, earlier in that, we walked through a region that we later found out had poison ivy. And I was the only one that ended up getting impacted. But yeah, it devolved into a full body rash that was like a thing for quite a bit of time. But I also touched a prickly pear in Spain.
Oh, in Spain?
Yeah.
Ooh, a foreign prickly pear.
So maybe that's my justification. I was in a foreign country, and I was like, in Arizona, I wouldn't touch this. But in Spain...
But in Spain, I'm feeling adventurous,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they call them tunas in Spanish-speaking countries.
Oh, do they?
The fruit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually in Grand Canyon, they have the gems. It's a series of rapids. And the first rapid in that series is tuna. And guests are always like, why is it called tuna? That's not a rapid, it's a fish. And because the prickly pear fruit is considered the gem of the desert. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Dropping knowledge. You also mentioned that you're going to be out on a lake with your raft, your inflatable raft.
Yeah.
Is that Lake Mary?
I'm going to do Lake Mary. Yeah. I think this weekend I'm going to go down to Canyon Lake.
Yeah.
In Phoenix, near Phoenix Mesa area.
Yeah.
And go hang out down there. Probably do some East Clear Creek stuff.
Okay. Why would you go to lakes other than Lake Mary?
This is a setup, by the way.
Is it? I mean, why not? Because they exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Are they... your face. Are they prettier? Are the other lakes more...
I feel like there's an ulterior motive here.
There is. That was a very leading question.
Yeah. Many lakes are much prettier than Lake Mary.
Okay, there we go. We did it.
Okay, we got there. Okay.
I mean, lakes in the White Mountains. And the White Mountains are so close, and that's home for me. My folks still live out in Show Low. My brother and his wife and their 3 kids are out there, so I go out fairly often and enjoy the superiorly beautiful lakes.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, dang.
There it
Lake
is.
Mary.
Yeah.
It is. Cody's a big Lake Mary fan. So
Love it.
And for me, it doesn't... It's an interesting phenomenon.
Have you been to other lakes, Cody?
Oh, I've heard of them. I've heard of other lakes. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of this idea of other lakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Superior, Michigan.
Yeah.
Erie.
It was eerie,
Yeah.
scary.
And what other lake? Yeah,
The Great Salt Lake.
the Great Salt Lake.
Great Salt Lake,
but
which
a
is technically an inland sea, isn't it?
Yeah.
man,
The saline
is
content.
Lake Mary considered an inland sea?
I think it's considered a reservoir,
Yeah,
typically.
it's not even a lake. Same as Lake Powell.
It's like Pluto's not really a planet, but it calls itself a planet.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
That's another hot topic for me.
Is it? Wow, okay.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of things here in Flagstaff, so the things that we do get, we want to hold on to.
Lake Mary and Pluto.
Yeah, we
Mary and Pluto.
we like to misrepresent them to be something of a
just to
higher
have
status than they are.
something.
Yeah.
Well, Molly, I love the way you've come out because Lake Mary and Pluto are basically Cody's two cornerstones, and you just blew both of them up.
Yeah, this is a really tough, difficult, and sad moment for me.
That's okay. Have you been up to Lowell? You spent time up at the Lowell
It's been a while,
Observatory?
but yeah.
Well, they have some cool exhibits up there.
Dude,
Yeah,
I saw
it's
their
pretty
plan
phenomenal.
for what they're going to do up there. Have you seen that by chance?
No.
Oh, they have like a whole, I don't know how long it'll take, but they're going to create a lot of things up there. It seems like they'll try and draw a lot of tourism, a lot of kids' activities, and that sort of thing.
Oh, cool.
Make it much different than it is now. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
neat.
The other thing I was going to ask you is you said you're taking your dad out on the river, so I wondered which section of river where you headed.
Yeah, I'm just going to do the back haul up from Lee's Ferry.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we're going to go upriver, but to the dam.
Yeah.
And then float down and camp out for a night and just hang out and chill out under the stars. And he keeps saying he's really excited about it. And like, for some reason, he doesn't think that I'm capable to plan this whole thing by myself. So he keeps sending me these crafts, these like water crafts. And he's like, how about this? And the last one he sent me was a pool toy. He was like, this one's really cheap. And I was like, it sure is, Dad. It's very cheap, but that's not what we're going to use.
The second day on the river may be a little rough.
Yeah, it would be a little rough. It would be. I don't want to have to use any of my wilderness first responder skills or my swift water rescue skills to save my father. So
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your skills. So on the river, how'd you get into the river, and tell us about that side of your life?
I actually was really lucky to get involved with the river when I did. I started guiding with Canyoneers in 2021. And previous to that, I'd done a couple of private trips, some in the Grand Canyon, some up in Idaho, and then like day trips all over the place down in Peru and Oregon, stuff like that. But a friend of mine, I'd never really given a whole lot of thought to commercial guiding, but a friend of mine worked for Canyoneers, and I've known him for a very, very long time. And he reached out to me and he was like, hey, Molly, like Canyoneers is looking for guides, and I think that you would like it, and I think that you would be good at it, so you should apply. And I was like, well, fine, I'll apply. And so I did. And it was actually partially my knowledge around plants and ethnobotany that got me a job, initially speaking. Canyoneers really emphasizes, and most of the companies really emphasize interp when you're on the river. So educating the passengers about geography, recent human history, indigenous culture, indigenous current affairs, that kind of thing. And one of the big gaps in knowledge for a lot of folks, because they're not as obsessed with plants as I am, is ethnobotany. And so within my interview, Cam Stavely, who's the manager and owner over at Canyoneers, asked me about my knowledge around Grand Canyon. And I was like, well, Cam, I know a lot about plants. And he was like, cool, not many people do. And then I got on my first trip and got totally hooked. And then I started grad school at the same time. And so I did grad school during the school year and then was on the river all summer.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear.
Mm-hmm. Especially, I've never studied it formally, really, except for my herbalism class, but.
Right. So just something that you found yourself naturally gravitating toward, took an interest in, and something that helped get you a job with Canyoneers.
Yep.
Yeah, open the door.
Yep.
Is it hard to get into the guiding game? Do you have to have like an in like that?
It usually takes a lot of experience and a lot of time. Like a lot of folks, or I mean, like some folks will start. There's like Grand Canyon Youth is another organization in town, and they take kids out on expeditions. And a lot of guides that I know at least kind of got their start with GCY. They were like, I went on a river trip when I was 13 years old and I got totally hooked. Yeah. And I knew this was what I wanted to do. And so they spent a lot of time and put a lot of energy into achieving that goal. And then other folks have worked on other rivers and done other things like that, and then kind of like graduated to Grand Canyon because it's like one of the head honchos in the guiding community. Like it's one of the goals that a lot of people want to do is go and guide in Grand Canyon.
And I was wondering too, like when you got in with Canyoneers, what it was like to develop in that role, just the process from where you were to where you are now, or where you were when you left Canyoneers, I guess.
Yeah, and I still guide with them. I do. I do one
you
trip
do?
a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
One a year.
Still, yeah,
Cool.
and maybe two next year. Okay. But I mean, I do predominantly motor trips. And so, I had all of the trips that I had done before that were oar trips, or paddle rafts. And so it's just a whole different beast, if you will. Motorboats are huge boats. The ones at Canyoneers are, I want to say 37 feet long. And they have, and they're powered by like a 30 horsepower motor. So they're actually like fairly difficult to drive. People always seem to think that motorboats are easier to drive because it has a motor, but it's such a small horsepower motor that it's not quite as easy as you would think. And there's lots of rocks in Grand Canyon, so you got to be aware of that as well. But at first, I would say that one of the most difficult things was how physically demanding it was when I first started. Because when I started working with Canyoneers and I started guiding, I had been, a rock climber and an aerialist. And at the time I was working as a landscaper down in Oak Creek Canyon. And so when I got hired on to Canyoneers, I was like, I am in like prime physical condition. I'm in great shape. I'm super strong. And then by like day 5 on the river, I was like, oh my God, I'm pretty sure every single item on this boat has gained 20 pounds since we started. And so that was challenging and also very humbling. And it's also just, like shepherding people through the harsh and unpredictable environment of Grand Canyon can be a little challenging. And the level of customer service, like constant customer service for 8 days, definitely takes a special kind of person to be able to like engage with people in kind and thoughtful ways for that long. Mm-hmm.
Do most people that end up going on those trips, do they have some degree of familiarity, or is it pretty?
No.
Wow.
No, for some folks, it's like their first time being in the Southwest. It's their first time being in a canyon. It's their first time being in like a desert kind of environment. And especially folks who come from lower elevation, they'll talk about how they trained, and like went to the gym and got on the Stairmaster and like, tried to like be in good physical condition to be in Grand Canyon. But it's at higher elevation that a lot of folks come from. And so that's really challenging, even if you've been training and been running and doing all that.
I imagine this episode will draw a lot of people who you're close to and are familiar with the river.
Yeah.
There might be some people who are not also. How would you describe the duties of a guide or a swamper?
It's kind of, when you think about driving a boat all day long, you're maybe like, oh, that's like really fun, but it can get pretty stressful, especially as water levels are lower. And so get to camp, and it's usually like the pilot and or the trip leader who will help to, they'll be on the boat and they'll be unloading stuff, and it's kind of up to the swampers to be like directing the setup of camp. So setting up the kitchen, setting up the toilet, doing all that stuff, making sure things are kind of like ready to go for dinner. It's a lot, at least at Canyoneers. We'll like lead hikes, kind of like take the initiative on like getting hikes out and give pilots like a second to hang out before they come up and join us. But really it's it's all about teamwork. Like we work together really cohesively, and it's a lot of work, and it can be really hard work, but we all work together and we get it done.
And so I think that in the context of doing customer service for 8 days straight or something to that effect. That's how you described it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty taxing thing.
It can be challenging. It's challenging, but it's also a really beautiful thing because, day one, at Lee's Ferry, you're all strangers. And by the time you're dropping your people off, or your clients off, it's a term I should use, at Diamond Creek, you've basically developed a little family. Mm-hmm. And some people stay friends for the rest of their lives and develop really cool, positive relationships. And
it's kind of a different time, context, right? When you get down on the river, time and a lot of the constructs that we create up here aren't as relevant. So it's probably like a little microcosm to build a family in 8 days.
Mm-hmm, totally. Yeah. And, it takes a community to make trips like that work. It's like all of the guests are helping to unload the boat. They're helping to set up the kitchen. They're just, helping with dishes, helping really in any way they can. And some people want to be more helpful than others. It just depends on personalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you all do things like, do you do entertainment occasionally? Like, do you bring music, or sometimes I hear of groups or companies bringing costumes. Do you do things like that in the evenings?
Yeah, definitely. Some folks will bring, I'm not musical, but some folks will bring guitars or ukuleles. At least at Canyoneers, we'll do like string quartet trips. We'll bring a string quartet down the canyon with us. I think we're doing like a bluegrass trip this year too, which should be pretty cool. And guides are storytellers, so that's like a big part of the job, and a big part of our day to day is telling people stories about people who have come before us, and just kind of like making the canyon as exciting as it possibly can be, and turning it into like a fun kind of educational trip too.
And so you mentioned, just kind of take us in a different direction a little bit, but you mentioned guiding with lower water levels a second ago. And I guess I was just curious to know what that's been like and what you've seen with the river, how that's shifted even in your time.
Yeah. And my time is pretty brief, but I do have to compare. Like last year, we had a pretty killer winter, and Lake Powell got a lot of water into it. And so, up until about September, water levels were like around like 18,000 plus, 18,000 cubic feet per second TFS. And it's really fun. You can just like drive the boat and you don't have to worry about as many rocks. But then as the water gets lower, more rocks are getting exposed, and you have to worry about hitting your prop or hitting your motor or getting your boat stuck or something like that. And so it's just a lot. It's a lot more stressful, and people just feel more gripped when the water levels are lower. And it's actually, it's for me, that's part of the reason why people have continued to use Whale Foundation, and our call volume is up a little bit higher, because it's just a little bit more stressful down there as the water levels are getting lower, and there's more consequences and smaller margins of error.
So you mentioned guides feeling more stressed. Something that contributes to that is lower water levels and just feeling gripped, you were saying. And you mentioned that call volume's been up with Whale Foundation, and that's kind of your work right now, right?
Yeah, definitely. We had, I can't remember the exact number. I think we were up 47% in number of counseling sessions from 2023 to 2022. Wow. Yeah, so it's a pretty big increase. And I think part of it is, there's more stress around low water. But on the other end, I think that it really represents kind of this like shift in willingness for people to be talking about mental health, and for people to be willing to ask for help when they need some support. I think that even nationally and perhaps even globally, there's this shift away from stigmatizing mental health needs, and we're kind of starting to see them in the same way that we see physical health needs, and like when you get hurt in a physical regard, you tend to it, and when you are injured in a psychological or emotional regard, you should tend to it. And I think really it helps to bring communities together. It's hard to be vulnerable, especially guides can have a hard time being vulnerable or asking for help because they're so used to helping people instead.
47% from 22 to 23, people reaching out for counseling in the guiding community.
Yep.
Wow. So would you be willing to share with our listeners what is Whale Foundation, or maybe a little bit of the history, what it is that you do? That sort of thing? Yeah,
definitely. So the Whale Foundation is a small nonprofit located in Flagstaff, Arizona. We were founded in 1996, so we've been around almost 30 years now. And our mission is to, let me see if I can remember, promote, restore, and celebrate the health and well-being of the Grand Canyon river guiding community.
Yeah, come on.
So we provide mental health services. That's kind of like the cornerstone of Whale Foundation, and that was like the principles in which it was founded on. It's called, perhaps you're wondering why it's called the Whale Foundation?
Yeah, sure.
So it was named after a gentleman, Curtis Whale Hansen, and he was a beloved Hatch River guide and had been just really like a key figure within the community. And when he decided that he was ready to transition out of guiding, I can't really speak to his experience because I didn't know him personally. But anyway, he struggled with the transition out of the guiding community into the conventional rim world, and ended up taking his own life. And so the community came together and his friends came together and founded the Whale Foundation so that people would never feel like they were alone again. And so they would feel like they had a really solid community of support and resources for support as well. And so that was kind of the premise that Whale Foundation was founded on. And so we started with our counseling program, and since then the organization has grown to involve the Tim Whitney Wellness Initiative. Tim Whitney was also a very beloved river guide, and he was an advocate for physical health services, getting health screenings, stuff like that. And so within the Tim Whitney Wellness Initiative, we offer the annual health fair at the guide training seminar up in Marble Canyon. And we also offer a health insurance stipend for folks who are paying for their own health insurance. And then kind of the third main program that's active right now is our Kenton Grua Scholarship. And that's for Grand Canyon river guides who want to go back to school, whether it's a university, a trade school, maybe they're getting an herbalism certificate, maybe they're getting a yoga teacher training. So it's really flexible and can kind of be applied to any educational pursuit.
And how did that get named after Kenton Grua?
So he's credited with the fastest run through Grand Canyon in 1983, him and a couple other folks, and was also just a lifelong learner. And, when he passed away from a really tragic mountain biking accident. I can't remember the year exactly. I want to say maybe 2002. But after he passed away, they founded the Kenton Grua Memorial Scholarship for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's what so that one got named after him because he was persistently learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had a bunch of theories around tectonic plates, and he was just a thinker and an innovator, and just had kind of a insatiable curiosity about the natural world around him.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's neat to hear how, so in 96 when Whale was founded, that it's grown so much. It sounds like initially it was trying to work with mental health, and then it's now grown into physical health and then also educational opportunities in supporting that.
Yeah, and we had a financial literacy program for a bit, and that's kind of it's kind of taken a rest, if you will. So one of the things that I would like to do in the next year or so is really start to revamp up that program and get some more financial literacy out there and help folks think about, creating budgets and saving money and being able to, I don't know if any of us will ever be able to buy a house, but we can dream about it.
Sure.
What are some of the unique complexities that you think guides and the guiding community face that leads to these resources from the Whale Foundation being so impactful?
Yeah, there's a lot of perks to being a Grand Canyon river guide. You get to spend a lot of time in one of the most beautiful places in the world. There's a really unique and beautiful community within the river guiding community. But there's also a lot of sacrifices involved. When you're on the river pretty much from April until September, your in-town relationships can suffer quite a bit. It can be really, really hard to maintain those. There's we're talking about different stresses and things like that. Occasionally there are incidents on river that can result in fatalities or result in people getting pretty seriously injured. And then there's also the fact that since you're a little bit removed from society, there's not quite as many structures around substance use. And so some folks might, start to edge into drinking a little bit too much when they're down the river, and substance abuse problems and things like that as well.
Yeah, I would imagine, I guess I'd wonder if you could speak to what those adjustments are like. I think you described as being below the rim in the rim world. And that season of, was it April to September? It sounds like it can be pretty taxing that way. And I wonder what those adjustments are like.
It's taxing and it's fulfilling all at the same time, because it's exciting to be down there. It's fun to be down there. You get to develop these really beautiful relationships with the folks that you kind of shepherd through the canyon. And you also get to be in this kind of larger than life guide role sort of thing where it's you're the person that people can turn to when they need things. And you're the person that has answers to their questions and things like that. But it's also taxing in that you're just kind of constantly on and you're giving a lot of energy. And so especially as the season persists and continues, maybe around August or something like that, people start to feel the effects of burnout. They start to get, some stress injuries and things like that. And it just makes it a little bit more difficult to engage with people and by an extension, engage with your environment, engage with yourself, engage with anyone in really authentic ways when you're starting to get tired and burnt out. But it's also something that, people don't want to sacrifice being in the canyon. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In the off season, I guess I'd wonder, what do people typically do? They remain in Flagstaff? Do they go around the country, travel, work? What might that look like?
All of it.
The whole thing.
There's
right?
all of it. Yeah. A lot of folks do. Some folks will say in Flagstaff, work up at Snowball, do ski patrol, lifty stuff, ski instructor. I know some folks who go up to Utah, Colorado. Some friends of mine make a point to travel all the time. They'll go to Mexico or South America, Latin America, wherever they feel called to, and go hang out and explore down there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just checking on Whale 2, I wonder, just as you continue to develop, you've been in the role now. It's pretty new, right?
Yeah, I've 4 months.
4 months. Yeah. So you're selected 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Finally.
Thank you.
Yeah. What have been some of the, I guess I'd be curious if you're willing to share, what are some of maybe the visions that you have for Whale Foundation? Sounds like financial literacy. What are some of the challenges you bump into also?
Challenges. Well, starting a new job is always a little bit challenging. Previous to this, I've never had an office job before. I've never had like a 9 to 5 job where you like go and sit in an office and like look at a computer and like check your email. I worked in coffee shops for a really long time. I bartended for a really long time. I did my landscaping gig, it didn't pay very well, but you just are wandering around this beautiful property in Oak Creek planting flowers all day. So that was pretty great. And then I went to grad school. So I guess that kind of primed me for an office job a little bit, although it didn't quite have the same like 9 to 5 structure. So that's been challenging, is just getting used to like, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 instead of, because when I was bartending, especially, I would work on the weekends. And so when I would like go out on my days off, it would be like no one else would be on the trails, or, I'd go to Lake Mary and no one else would be out there. And so it's just getting used to like kind of existing with the rest of society and like recreating at the same time as everyone else. And then also just the learning curve of kind of like teaching myself how to be an executive director of a nonprofit organization, and trying to go about things with curiosity and integrity and patience. And, every now and then I hit these roadblocks and I'm not exactly sure how to solve them or how to get over them, and just take some steadfastness and some patience and a little bit of grace.
So Justin, to punch in that time clock, adjusting to a new role altogether, what are some of the visions that you have? What direction do you want to take Whale Foundation?
I see so much potential for Whale Foundation to be a really incredible resource for the community, outside of just offering mental health counseling, physical health resources, all of our current existing programs and services. I really want us to start throwing more events that will bring the community together and foster the sense of community and cohesion. I think that as we can alleviate these feelings of loneliness and isolation, especially that come over us in the wintertime when we're away from our river community and we're away from our river family, and it's a little bit colder and it's the time of year where we all kind of like turn inward a little bit. I think being able to alleviate some of those feelings of isolation will really help the community to grow and blossom and develop in really beautiful ways. And maybe that would even be reflected in like a little bit lower of a call volume for the helpline, because folks are kind of, developing these cohesive communities. They have each other, they have support systems, support structures, things like that. We're just about to start offering mental health first aid courses. I'm getting my certification to be a trainer next week. And so we'll be able to kind of like help people develop that language around how to support one another when we start to notice that maybe they're going through a mental health crisis or something like that. I want to do a guide made market probably in October or November. The community is just full with so many wonderful, creative, inspiring people. And so I want to be able to develop a space for them to come and sell their crafts. And, that gives people who engage with the community but aren't guides the opportunity to support folks, get some cool gifts for Christmas and things like that. And then also an opportunity for guides to, get their businesses out there and make a little bit of money right before they go into the winter season.
Yeah, that's so cool. Everything you're describing, I was thinking of like, this seemed like it was really present. The last time we saw you was at Wingding, and it seemed that so many of the items that were auctioned, that's a huge fundraiser for Whale Foundation, right?
It is, yeah.
Were donated or created by people in the guiding community. There's so much like photography and art and jewelry, really incredible stuff. it sounds like your vision would be to create a community or to strengthen that bond that the community has.
Yeah, and have, I feel like Well Foundation's in this unique position to be holding events that bring the community together and really foster that sense of community, between kind of like all of the different outfits or all of the different outfitters that run Grand Canyon. And so that's something that I really, really want to build and really want to develop. We're talking about doing like a logo release party because we just developed a logo.
Whoa, exclusive here, right?
Exclusive.
Yeah,
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Yeah,
breaking news. There was a little small bit in our newsletter about it, but for the most part, it's breaking.
Okay.
Kind of breaking-ish.
Breaking-ish. Yeah. Not all the way broken yet.
New logo.
Yeah, brand new logo. Yep.
New logo party.
New logo party. And it's just going to be something really simple, I think, where we'll just like invite members of the community, maybe go to a park or something like that, play some cornhole.
Yeah.
Maybe barbecue some vegetarian burgers.
Yeah, veggie burgers.
Meat, whatever
On the
else.
grill.
Whatever's on the grill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really neat, maybe interesting to hear you say also that whether intended or unintended effect of this, would that be creating a community or strengthening that bond would also be reducing the call volume for mental health services?
Maybe.
Potentially.
Right. I was thinking about that this morning, and that could be like, that could be a longer effect of, developing this like really strong community.
Yeah,
I think
certainly.
Yeah, I think communities are revolutionary.
Yeah.
We seem to be moving directions that move away from them. We actually know, like currently they describe it as a loneliness epidemic, right? Mm-hmm. It's because we've learned how to do so much of our lives without directly interacting with others. And so a lot of what you're talking about is stuff that is demonstrated to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even just like small interactions with, the teller at the bank or the person at the grocery store who's bringing up your groceries for you. The absence of those interactions is actually really detrimental for our own personal happiness and our own personal well-being. Mm-hmm. I was listening to a podcast, a different podcast, a couple of weeks ago, and it was talking about how a lot of these like ATM machines, self-checkout machines were developed by folks who might be a little bit more inclined toward introversion and might not be as inclined to have these like brief interactions with other human beings. They think of them as inconvenient or taxing or something like that. And so basically we're all living in this world that's been designed by introverts, even though not all of us are introverts, and we all actually could benefit from having those interactions with everyone and anyone.
Yeah, familiar faces and places, people and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dan's going to be hurt by the idea that introverts are...
Yeah, I think a lot more of the world could accommodate introversion.
I think so too.
Yeah.
No, I mean, what you're talking about is really, it's kind of a known thing that we need to move back in directions to build community. And so ultimately, some of the ideas and vision you're talking about would be things that would be working on prevention. And it is kind of like, it's cool sitting with you. It's like watching a light bulb go off. You say maybe a long-term objective is that would be manifested in lower numbers for individuals seeking mental health.
Yeah, which to me, the lower call volume wouldn't represent, us not meeting our goals of serving the community. Right. But it's so much easier to prevent things from happening than to address things that have happened, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, doesn't a lot of the research in our field would suggest like that having that community bond or having that social connection will buffer stress. Mm-hmm. And so people have that to come back to. And a period of adjustment would help maybe, again, like offset something like call volume. And it sounds to me like you're not like, well, we want to reduce this call volume. It sounds like it could be potentially a good service to have or something in place. Mm-hmm. But again, strengthening or reaching the goal would actually be strengthening the community is the way I hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like going upstream instead of dealing with the problem downstream, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's so cool. Sitting with you, there's two broad themes that come up. It's like this orientation towards connection and community. Like even the way you talked about your clients. Mm-hmm. What's the word that you preferred? Clients?
Clients, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But friends, you refer to them as friends. And then here talking about these efforts or vision for the Well Foundation. And that theme kind of coalesces with this other theme of like having a deep passion for looking at the natural world in your herbalism, botany, and your love of the river. Yeah, so it makes me curious. How did you become aware of these characteristics? These seem like inborn characteristics in you. How did you go through the process of learning this about yourself?
You mean about like the importance of community?
Community and the natural world, those seem like the two prominent themes for you.
It's been a long process of self-discovery, I would say. I wouldn't say that growing up I had like a really strong, solid network. Like my childhood to a certain extent was probably a little bit lonely. And so it's been a really long and sometimes arduous process to learn how to like become vulnerable and like develop authentic connections with other people. And through that journey, I've learned that it's really effective and it's really worth it, you know, even though it's like kind of scary to think about opening up to people and vulnerabilities and putting yourself out there in ways that might not always feel comfortable. The return on those investments is always, at least I found, humongous. And it has elevated my own personal well-being and my own energy and my own desire to like make a positive impact in the world in such a way that I really want to share that message with other people. That it's, you know, I feel like we're conditioned to think that it takes a lot of strength to be independent and it takes a lot of strength to be self-sufficient. And I think it also takes a lot of strength to ask for help. And I think it takes a lot of strength to open yourself up to people and to be vulnerable with folks because it's so scary. You know, it's almost safer, if you will, to suffer in silence than it is to ask people for help.
Yeah. Hey, that arduous journey, I don't know if you'd be willing to share any of that. Like what phase of life did that happen? How did you shift from what felt kind of like lonely or isolating into this awareness of community and how to develop authentic relationships?
Yeah, and I think that's something we all kind of struggle with from time to time. Like, even if people appear objectively to be really well connected, they still might have these like subjective feelings of loneliness. And so offering kind of like extensions to them and checking in with folks, regardless of how they appear, because I think some people suffer really silently. And so it's good to check in with folks. And yeah, and you were asking about my own journey. Yeah, you know, and I'm still on it. And I think that's part of it, you know, is like I grew up in a context where I couldn't relate with a lot of people, you know, because a lot of people had different religious beliefs than me. They had different political beliefs than me. And so I had this like feeling of isolation, maybe in high school, and just was like kind of nerdy and shy and quiet. And then I think when I was like 15 or 16, I had this moment, I don't know what incited it, but I had this moment where I was like, gosh, I'm just tired of being like this, and like decided to start to put myself out there a little bit more. And then it's just been, you know, a 20-year journey of trying to do that a little bit better and trying to be authentic and, you know, trying to prioritize connection over attention or prioritize connection over whatever else.
So something clicked at some juncture and you kind of turned a corner. You said, I'm tired of feeling lonely, feeling on an island. So I'm going to control what parts of it I can control. Yeah. So it wasn't that you ended up leaving that community that kind of felt isolating. You just tried to do the best with what was there at that point in time. Yeah.
And that's when you start looking for similar people too, you know, and like, I think that no matter where we are, communities can exist. And that's like one of the beautiful things about technology and social media, right? Is that like, even if geographically we feel really isolated, digitally we can be part of these really amazing and beautiful communities.
Like the Arizona Mushroom Society.
Like the Arizona Mushroom Society.
Yeah.
AMS.
AMS is locals.
Yeah.
Call it. Those in the know.
Yeah.
I'd be curious also about your journey then with the natural world. Was it something that do you have memories as like a young child engaging the outdoors, and what opportunities were provided for you, or what opportunities did you catch yourself just going out and pursuing that way?
Yeah. And I think part of that maybe, you know, like in feeling a little bit isolated as a child, I found a lot of solace in the natural world, you know, and so I was a free range kid. You know, I grew up in Sholo, Arizona. It's a super small town. And my house is very adjacent to, ponderosa pine tree forests and just kind of like places that are ripe for exploration. And so, 4-year-old me would just go and like cruise around in my backyard, my unfenced backyard. And I remember I had this like one rock that I would go hang out and sit on. It was like a boulder that was like 5 times the size of me. I don't know how big it is now. I haven't been back there in a really long time. But I remember going and just spending a lot of time collecting plants and like picking flowers and, making mud pies and like doing whatever weird stuff kids do as they're like exploring the natural world. And I think that just always really stuck with me, and it just became a place where I felt really comfortable and really connected.
Earlier you mentioned some of the lakes. You referenced White Mountains having better lakes than Lake Mary, and we'll let that go.
Yeah.
No, that's like pretty objectively factual.
I was gonna say, what are some of your favorite lakes out there? Some of your favorite rivers or places that you would like to go?
I love the White Mountains. As far as like Arizona is concerned, I think that the White Mountains are stunningly beautiful. There's so much water there, and they're big enough to kind of create their own little like microclimate, so the weather can be a little bit different than the rest of the state. The plants out there are just incredible. You can find OSHA, which is really uncommon. You can find it up in Lake Colorado and parts in the White Mountains, but it's a really uncommon plant. And so that's fun to like go out and try to look for it, and just not even necessarily pick it, but just hang out with it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm a wanderer. I'll go out in the forest with my dog, and luckily I've kind of developed my sense of direction over the years, so I don't get lost as much as I used to. But I'll just go and kind of wander off trail, and to the point where I'll just like open up a map and pick a Forest Service road and cruise down it, and sometimes it's dead end, and sometimes my car can't make it, and sometimes it's mediocre, and sometimes it's really cool.
Yeah.
What was sorry to go back to the White Mountains, the plant that you found was called OSHA?
OSHA, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about OSHA. You said you can find it there in Colorado.
Yeah, you can find it in the White Mountains, in like Durango, San Juan Mountains, kind of stuff like that. It's a member of the Apiaceae family, so it's like same family as like Angelica, carrot, are all in Apiaceae family. Poison hemlock also, which is one of the reasons why it's really important to know how to identify plants for what they are and not just like the family that they're in, because you don't want to like mix up Queen Anne's lace with poison hemlock because you might perish. So
yeah, that's a consequence.
Yeah.
I like just listening to you explain OSHA just for a second makes me feel like, oh wow, I know nothing about
Herbalism or botany.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear you describe it, and then its importance as well. Yeah,
cultural importance, and then also it's just nice to have a hobby every now and then.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's cool to learn about all the ways you're connected to these different areas. We appreciate you allowing us to geotag your favorite spots around the globe here. And it makes me curious how this manifested into the role as executive director you have with Well Foundation. How did you end up there?
Yeah, so and I guess they're not like directly linked necessarily. Like I was talking about how I was able to kind of like leverage my knowledge around plants to be able to start guiding. But then it kind of like this whole separate journey kind of started from that. As I said, I just graduated my master's last May, and I started my master's at the same time that I started guiding. And so initially when I started my master's, I thought I was going to go on to get a PhD in clinical psychology. I really wanted to build gardens and study attention restoration theory and do all of that kind of stuff. But about 3 weeks into my master's, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this for an extra 7 years. And so I really decided to make my master's as applied as I possibly could. And so that looked like me working with multiple different nonprofit organizations within the Flagstaff community. So I did program evaluations with Grand Canyon Youth and Flagstaff Shelter Services. And I was also a community outreach intern for the NARBA Institute. And so it was really those 3 experiences that set me up to be in this executive director role. And the reason that I wanted to work with the Whale Foundation, because initially when I finished my master's, I was like, okay, I'm going to guide for a couple of more years, hang out in Flagstaff, and then I'm going to move on and I'm going to go live somewhere else and explore somewhere else and fulfill my like Jack Kerouac vagabonding dreams with a little bit more integrity than he did, at least hopefully. But then this position at the Whale Foundation had opened up, and I had utilized their services before this role became available. So when I was getting my master's, I mean, you guys both know that grad school itself is fairly traumatic, or it can be fairly traumatic. And I was doing qualitative interviews with homeless individuals at the non-congregate shelter at Flagstaff Shelter Services, the Crown Hotel that they just opened up about a year ago, which is a really incredible model. But I was doing these interviews with people, and it had a really profound effect on me, and not necessarily in a positive way, because you're talking to people about just some of the most heart-wrenching stories that you've ever heard. And so as I was conducting these interviews and as I was engaging with folks of that demographic, I was really kind of taking on and internalizing some of their trauma. And a professor of mine noticed that something was kind of off with me, and he was like, "Molly, something seems a little off. I'm not sure what's going on." It's but I think maybe, it would be a good idea for you to start seeing a therapist and going to therapy and kind of working through these issues that you've been having, from the stress of grad school to hearing and kind of absorbing all of these really difficult stories. And luckily, since I was involved in the river guiding community, I had the Whale Foundation as a resource. And so even though my trauma and my mental health issues had nothing to do with an incident on river or anything on river, I was able to call the Whale Foundation and was matched with a counselor, with a therapist within a week, I want to say. Oh, wow. Yeah, and was able to start therapy pretty much immediately. And I mean, it was night and day. About 3 weeks after I'd been seeing my therapist, and I just had a really awesome opportunity to kind of process the vicarious trauma that I was experiencing from these folks. And that was a term I hadn't heard before, and it wasn't something that really landed on me until I was having these experiences of, we have this ability, especially as empathetic and compassionate entities, compassionate individuals, to really internalize and take on other people's trauma. And so it was an opportunity for me to be able to work through that. And I was just so grateful for Whale Foundation. And then I also was a recipient of the Kenton Grua Scholarship. And that helped me pay off all of my debt from graduate school. And so I'm debt free, which just feels really
that's awesome.
Come on.
Yeah. And then when the position opened up I heard about it in September, and I was like, well, this is really just the perfect confluence of my experiences and passions and skills. And so I decided to apply, and now here I am.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's incredible. So, cool. So it had a powerful impact on you and provided resources that had a powerful impact on you. And then here you are leading the ship. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. You're the pilot.
Trip leader, yeah.
Trip leader.
Trip leader of the Whale Foundation.
Yeah. So your experience compelled you to, does it feel like serving or giving back in that way?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And just, because I have all these ideas around developing communities, and this just felt like such an amazing opportunity to be able to do that with a community that I have so much respect and reverence for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just thinking, we're very stoked on you and the work you're doing. I think Whale Foundation made a great selection.
Yeah, thank you.
Bringing you on. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It was a pleasure to meet you, and to, I don't know, I think of even wingding and the energy that you bring to that, and looking forward to seeing how you navigate challenges with whale, and then also seeing your visions come to life and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, really for cool. Sure.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's been great to watch.
So we typically conclude our episodes,
We don't like saying goodbye without.
Yeah, we usually have a little bit of a transition.
Yeah, you don't want to be abrupt or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't want to be abrupt and I don't know, rude or callous or interpersonally stunted. And so...
Are you just going to unplug my mic? And
so I just want to give you a heads up because we're done. Yeah, so we do typically like to ask the person that we sit with just about their connection to Flagstaff and how you would describe that. So we'd be curious to hear how you describe your own connection to Flagstaff and the community.
Yeah, so I came to Flagstaff fresh out of high school. I came here for my bachelor's degree. And I was here for a couple of years. I remember I had this conversation with my dad where I was like, Dad, like I figured out what I want to study in school and I know what I want to do with my life. And he was like, that's amazing, Molly. What do you want to do with your life? And I was like, I want to be a poet and I want to study creative writing. And that's what I want to do. And he was like, maybe you should take some time off school and just think about it for a little bit. Yeah. And so I did. I took 2 years off school and traveled around for a bit. I spent some time in the Caribbean and in Boulder and Tucson, and then ultimately ended up coming back to Flagstaff. And I finished my bachelor's degree, not in poetry, in neuroscience. And then I moved again and was up in Washington and Boulder and just like really felt called to come back to Flagstaff. And so I came back and I've left and I've come back and I've left and I've come back. And it's always just felt like such a inclusive, exciting, progressive, and fun community. I think that one of the things that I've been thinking of a lot lately in a couple of different regards is I feel like this community really prioritizes making each other's dreams come true in really tangible ways. For example, a friend of mine last week put on an event called Taboo, and it's a celebration of the forbidden female, and I got to MC for that. And I just remember when she was talking about it initially, and it was just this seed of an idea, and she planted it in the community, and the community nurtured it and tended to it, and it blossomed and fruited into this amazing event that received a ton of good feedback, and a lot of people had a really good time. And then another friend of mine, she just got married and she loves Celine Dion, and, they asked the DJ to play the song, and completely unperformed and unrehearsed, her and 4 of our other really good friends put on this very 6-minute performance of her singing It's All Coming Back to Me Now. And it was just one of her dreams that she's always wanted to do at her wedding. And so we made it come true. And so that's how I see the Flagstaff community. It's a place where you can come and it encourages creativity, and it encourages individuality while it also encourages community. And there's just so much energy, and there's so much kindness, and there's so much progression. And I feel really grateful to get to be such a integral part of the community in the ways that I am.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, all that to say, again, thank you so much for taking time out to sit with us and describing your experience and what led you to Whale and all the things that you love and the things that keep you connected and engaged to your life is, for me, it was really fun to learn. I imagine it'll be great for the listeners as well. So thanks for carving out some time for us.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. And I really love what you guys are doing with trying to foster more connections within the community and, highlighting Flagstaff organizations and Flagstaff individuals that are really making these really beautiful ripples within the community. So thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
All right, so Molly just left the nice house.
Nice house, the historic nice house on Birch Ave.
And unto thee, a nice house of historicness in its value and worth.
Yes, and also into the worth and value of historic ice houseness. Yes, sir.
How lucky was Molly?
Yeah, I think very lucky.
Well,
to finally leave. Yeah, she was feeling very lucky to finally get out of here.
Happy to go.
Yeah. What a cool time, though, man.
She was great energy.
Yeah, big time. She covered a lot.
She did cover a lot. She's kind of like a person that seems to just look at the world to explore it.
Yeah, for sure. Is that one of your takeaways from this?
Yeah. I think there were a lot of takeaways. There always is.
Yeah.
But I really loved, it felt like one of her earliest passions was actually just not being intimidated by the natural world. What's that book, The Last Child in the Woods? Is that the title of it? Do you remember?
I'm not sure.
I think that might be the title, but it references how we often set up society to teach the message that nature isn't something to be interacted with. Like we build parks and spaces where there are rules for how you should or should not engage the environment around you, or we supplement it by adding things to it, constructions, versus just going out into the woods and exploring. And the thing I picked up from Molly is from an early age, she seemed really unintimidated by picking things up, touching things, exploring things. And then that evolved and grew into like an actual formal learning about herbalism and botany and this incredible knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, the follow through. It was
Yeah.
really interesting to learn about some of the stuff she's come into contact with.
Yeah, and that she knows, right?
Yeah,
She's
totally.
labeling those plants.
Self-taught, self-educated on the thing, right?
Yeah.
She was saying. Yeah, that was super cool. It was neat to learn about her upbringing, Sholo area. She was a little guarded or protective of her spots.
Yeah.
Can't blame her.
Well, yeah, you kept prying.
I kept prying, man. I want to know those spots. Give me those spots.
Cody just let Cody in.
Just hit me with a couple GPS coordinates. I don't need all of them. Just a couple.
Cody's just trying to creep on those prime locales.
Creep on the prime locales. Yeah. That's one way to describe that.
You know that you would geotag them on the IG and it'd be
for
over.
sure. Yeah, that was my goal. I want to go to Molly spots. I want to create a whole thing. Hashtag Molly spots. And then just
Instagram.
Worldwide.
How many followers does your personal account have?
Not many.
Yeah, just Instagram that out to the few hundred.
Yeah, a few hundred. Yeah, they would be pretty maybe surprised to see me show up. I don't think I'm very active on that mug.
Yeah.
So if I came out with Molly spots,
Yeah.
maybe that'll generate some interest.
I think she was worried about Molly's spots. I think she was worried about my IG. I think she's worried about no gram for Dan.
No gram for Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah, getting out there?
I think I'm up to I haven't checked in a year or so,
Okay.
but I think I was up to 30.
Dang. Is
Yeah.
it still, do your followers still match the number of people you follow?
Oh yeah, let me check. Yeah, you knew that was one of my.
I love that. Yeah. Remember Adam Grant talking about givers, takers, and matchers?
Dan's just
Dunny is
a matcher. What did you take away from Molly?
There's so much. One thing that really stuck out to me was just talking about her vision for Whale Foundation, which seems to be rooted in her personal value of connecting with others, and just talking about the effect and the impact, how important community building is, and how that can happen on a very, I guess maybe like centralized local type of way, different than just trying to like globally try and organize around one thing. She seemed very interested in the guiding community, particularly here in Flagstaff, with a lot of ideas to bring folks together.
Oh yeah,
Get them connected,
yeah. I think a lot of what she's talking about is preventative, like is the thing that we're kind of craving.
Totally. Yeah, I think she's like right on par, man. Yeah, I think she has a great idea. Feel really supportive of what the direction that she's going, and what she's hoping to accomplish, and yeah, I think that was part of my takeaway. So I'll be excited to see. Also with her creativity and just what she comes up with, what types of ideas, and in pairing that with her follow through to see what she creates. Yeah.
Yeah, she had a great energy. Like you mentioned, the follow through, sitting with her, it's like there's something about her that's so authentic, but also instills a sense of confidence that she's going to land the things that she's talking about. So, yeah, it's cool.
I believe that.
Believe that.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, why don't you take us out by shouting us out?
No doubt. You can always find us on the interwebs. www.beyondflag.com. Flag spelled
FLG.
And we are on Instagram. You now know our personal handles. No gram for Dan. And if you follow him, he will follow you.
Because I need that number to be equal.
The number has to be equal. Givers, matchers, and takers. Dunny's a matcher. You can also find our Beyond the Pines account at beyond_flag.
Flag spelled FLG.
Right. Beyond_fold. All right, then.
All right. Take care.
Lovies.
Thanks for doing that.
Starburst.
There's a starburst. And this is going to be the post episode edit right here.
Yeah, this will be the outtakes for sure.
I feel like you're trying to steal my secret spots. I feel like what you're doing right now is you're trying to figure out what lakes
I'm
are
on my
more
phone.
beautiful than Lake Mary so that you can go visit them.
Yeah, I'm geotagging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to need coordinates. Yeah.
Actually, Cody, he's satiated with Lake Mary. He has no interest in pursuing.
Yeah, I'm really
others.
confused when people talk about Bear Lakes. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. I think that like being, satisfied with the mediocre is really like,
Yeah, come on.
It's a really great character trait.
Yeah, that's kind of you,
Pluto,
Molly.
Lake Mary, Ted Danza. What do we got like stuff? You know what I'm saying?
Ted Danza. Well, you've already blown up Pluto and Lake Mary. Do you have anything to say about Ted Danza?
No, I don't know who Ted Danza is.
Oh wow! Well, you just did. Yeah, there you go.
Who is
3
he?
out of 3, man.
Who is he?
He's an actor.
Did you ever hear the show
Flagstaff.
Cheers?
Yeah, have I heard of the show Cheers? Yes, I've heard of the show Cheers.
He's the
like
bartender.
Bartender in Cheers.
But he's from Flagstaff.
So cool to hear.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, it's a nurturing community.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry for you abruptly end things.
Cody, could you
Do you want me to try to handle this part
Could
for
you
us?
unplug Molly's?
Yeah.